All right. Okay, now we're ready to do some coding behind the scene. If we go to the code assistant again, and let's do something with these sliders. Now, to get the value of these sliders, you can do it in two ways. One way is that you do something similar. You will put an IB outlet, or if you connect it to an action, then you can get the value from the action itself. Before we do this, to do the calculation, we need a few variables. One of them is the weight, and one of them is the height, and then the BMI. So I'm going to define those variables. So those will be the value from these. The value from this is actually float. So I'm going to define height as float, and I'm going to make it the default value, which is what, 1.5. And I'm going to make var W, which is the weight. Again, it's a float, and the default value for the weight is 75 kilogram. Okay, so we'll define two variables. On the last one, I'm going to do var actually BMI, and it is again float, because we have a float. We're going to be using float in both in the equations. The two variables we're using in the equations are float, so the result is a float, and I'm going to make it equal to 0. All right. Now, when we change let's do this first. We're going to connect this. Again, notice where I put this method somewhere, or this action somewhere after an end of a method. Don't put it inside an end of a method. It will be a problem. So I'm going to call this as an action. But now the event is what? The event is value change. And the type, you can use any object, but I'm going to use a slider. It makes it easier to get the value. If you make it any object, then you will have to use something called casting to a UI slider, and then you can get the value. All right, but this would be easier. And I'm going to give it a name. This is the name for this is what? Weight changed, right? Weight change, okay? So I have a method now will be called weight change, or a function, every time that you change this value here. And you notice this plus, when I point on it, you see how it means? That means it is this plus is connected with this. Okay, this action is connected with this object on the screen. Same thing I'm going to do with this one. And it's an action, and I'm going to call it height change. And the type, I'm going to use UI slider, and we click on connect. And the event, you can have multiple events here. Because it's a slider, we usually tag it to value change. But if it's a text file, you can edit it like you're editing a text, or so you have different states you can monitor for. Did begin editing, or end editing, or cancel touch, or touch down. So you can monitor for all of these actions in your code, and then you could have an action for every one of those. Okay, but that would be weird. I don't know, would you do that? But you can if you want. Okay, so this is it, value change, and we hit connect. So now I got the methods for when we change this slider, when we click on check. All right, so what are we going to do in this first one when we have a weight change? What we're going to do, I have this label. Two things. I'm going to take this label and do what with it, and change it to the value that is what? That is coming to us in the sender object. So when the action is called, the parameter sent to us is the actual control, okay, which is this object. It's come to us The name of it is sender, and the type of it is a slider. Let me show you. So if I say height, this is weight. So if I say W equal sender, notice we have something called that value, and that value is float. So what have I done now? I assigned whatever value is being set here to a local variable in my code. It's called W. Why? Because I want to use it in my equation when I click on check. All right. The second thing, I want to produce the output in here. So I can say, we have a label here. Remember, this is a label weight. I can say LBL weight and dot text. This has a property dot text. Now, if I make it equal, remember we were using print line and we were formatting this. Okay, so if I say W, notice what's going to happen. Okay, it would work, but it's not the same way we want it to work. And I wanted to say this is weight, so I'm going to say kilogram here. Okay, so the value of W would be replaced to whatever value we have here. Now, if I run it, you'll see what's going to happen. If I do this, it changes. So that's good, but we have a problem. What is the problem? The problem is we have all these digits. We want to format the output. This is not what we want, but at least it's working. So what I want is that I want to change, instead of this, we want to use something different. And that something different, we use one of the old classes in Xcode, which is a string. And a string is very, very powerful class, has a lot of things. And we want to use a feature called format. What we're going to format, let me just, so you can see it all, let me close this, and I'll go back to the code, to the Swift here. Okay, what you're going to see here, we're going to put a string. In that string, I'm going to put kilogram, and wherever you want the value to appear, you will use formatting characters. So you can say %, dot 2F. What that means, I want to format a floating value. The dot 2 means 2 decimal. If you don't put that, it will just be the same thing that we've seen earlier. Okay, so that's why I have 2.f. Okay, so I'm formatting a floating value. If you're doing integers or decimal, you would be like D or I. Okay, and now here is the actual value that we want to print, which is to display, which is W. Here is W. Okay. If we have more variables, you just separate them by comma, and then you will have more of those in here. Okay. All right. So that is for that. We can do the same thing for this guy here. The only thing that differs, now we have height. Again, because it's sender, UI slider. Okay. And then I have, of course, you could have done this in a different way, more smart way, but you can have both of them coming to this, two actions coming to the same method, and then you can check which object is being sent. But this is for now is good enough. And here, instead of label weight, we'll use label height. All right. And instead of W, we say H. All right. Now let's run it. See what happens. You notice I got 2 decimal, I got 2 decimal. Oh, both of them says kilogram, so we have a problem, right? What do we have to do? Instead of kilogram here, what do we have? Put meter. All right, so now we're ready actually to do the calculation, the BMI calculation. Okay, according to the BMI calculation, BMI is simply equal to, because we already got the value, we got the weight and the height, they already have values. It is equal to the weight divided by the height square, which is h times h. Okay. And here you can check before we do the checking, just to show you the result, we could do something similar to this, okay? Something similar. We can say BMI, instead of label height, we have a label called label results. And to F and say your BMI value is, and then we will put that, and here it will be BMI. Okay. Now we're not done. We want to do some checking before we do this part, but I want to show you the result. Okay, so if I click on check, this is my BMI value. If I change this and I click on check, I get a different BMI value. Okay, the higher I am, the lower the BMI value. Now, we could have done this, calculate the BMI as we change this, okay? As we change this, we can calculate the BMI. In the future, I'll show you how we do that. But for now, we have a button. When you click on the check, it will show you the result, okay? All right, so, but that's not all about the BMI. This is not what we want to do with the BMI value. Remember, we have if statements and switch statements. I'm going to show you the two ways to do it. One way we do it with the if statement, and one way to do it with the switch statement. Luckily, I have the code already here somewhere. I'm just going to copy it. All right, I have the code with the if statement. All right. All right. Hit command copy, and I'll explain this code in the new one, so I don't have to retype it again. What we're doing here, we have the BMI value. Now here I'm using actual string to display the message. That's fine. So we need to define a string var string equal empty. Okay. So this is the variable. Instead of putting it directly into the result, I'm defining a string variable. So what are we doing here? We're checking we have an if statement. The first condition is the BMI value is less than 18. I format this message string format, which we already talked about. Your BMI is, this is a 2F, and I put the result. The result is underweight. Okay, now you don't need to use this. You can put a comma and say underweight. Okay. Let's make it one word. Okay. And there is the result. Now, to be make it a little bit smart, I also changed the label result background color to reflect what is the result. So if it is underweight, I give him an orange color. That means a little bit risky. Okay, it's risky. If it's not less than 18.5 and it is between 18.5 greater than or equal and it's less than 25, then you are in the normal weight. All right, normal weight, keep up the good work. And the BMI value, and we change the background color of that label to green. If it is between 25 and less than 30, then again we do another calculation and we get an overweight, not another result, we get overweight, and then I change the color to red. Otherwise, it's above. If it's more than that, that means that you're actually obese. Okay, and then we will have, this should say obese here. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Let's see, we need one more thing here, which is the label result. Obese is actually obese. This is the last part, which we do it at the end. And this is obese actually. The last thing we do is that after I calculate the result, after I do all the checking, and I put the proper message in that string, we just take that string and put it in the LBL result.text, and then we will say equal to string str. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is how we use it all happens in the when we click on the button check, and when we using the if statement. All right. Now if we run it, you'll notice that I do this, and I do check. The result is overweight, and because it's red and orange, it didn't look good. All right, so we need to do something with the UI. Okay, let's go back to the storyboard. Okay, and let's make this different color. Okay, so we'll make that. Let's make it black. Okay. Now, one thing to notice, one thing will happen that you will see later on is actually if the result is too big, it will actually keep going like this, and you'll see dot, dot, dot. Okay. We want to actually show as much as possible. So what we do is that we specify the number of lines. Either you put 1 or 2 or 3, or if you don't know the numbers, just put 0. 0 will automatically fit as many lines as possible. Okay, and then you can make it center if you want. Okay. Now, if we run it, you'll notice if I do this and then I do check, all right, if it was normal weight, I think it was go higher here and do check, you'd see it's 2 lines, but it fit, and then we got the color green. And that's how we do the BMI with the if statement. All right, if you don't like the color, background color, of course you can change the view background if you want to something different. This is, you'll have to change this color. It didn't look good, but maybe something like this. No, so not this color. Okay, so something that you can see easily. All right. All right, so this would be in the view, background view. You click on the view and the background view. All right, let's go back to the Swift class again one more time. And now, instead of using the if statement, I'm gonna comment all of this and just keep the last part. We're going to do the same thing, but we use something called, we use the switch statement. Again, I got the code from before, and I'm just going to copy this and put it here. And then let's see what happens. How is this different than the if statement? I have a range between 0 and 18 for it inclusive here. Remember, we do the same thing, switch BMI. And if it is in this range, you do this. If it is in this range, you do this. If it is in this range, you do this. And the default value means it's more than that, or it could be negative in this case, but it will be what it will say. Your value is you are obese. Okay, this would be greater than 30. It would work the same way. You wouldn't see any difference, but this would, maybe it's a cleaner code. Okay. All right, and check the result. You got the idea. And then if you make them taller, you get green. All right. So that is a simple app. Your first app. It uses some of the important features in Xcode. We use the outlets. We use the storyboard. We use actions. We use variables. We define some variables. We have variables. These are your outlets. We have some variables. We have functions, methods. Right now we haven't covered functions, but we will use them as they are. We have actions, that means things that tie to the screen. When something happens on the screen, these actions are get called. We've used formatting, how to format string, and we use some simple calculations. All right, that's it for this video.